Okay. Hello, everyone. In this webinar, we'll briefly talk about Flutter and GitHub. So basically, we'll have the basics of Flutter and a little bit of Git and GitHub so that you can see how you can work in a team of multiple people on the same project. So for the agenda, for the GitHub basics part, we will see how you can create a GitHub account, what are repositories, branches, and as a little extra, we'll talk about pull requests. Okay. And for the Flutter part, we will see the Flutter basics. We will see how we can build a really simple to-do application in Flutter. And for this application, we will also do some API calls, to play with the to-dos. So we'll store the to-dos on a remote server, not locally in the application, so that you can see how you can make a few HTTP requests. For the resources, you have a few links down there. I will just send you the presentation and you will be able to click on them after. So first off, what's the deal with Git? So basically, we have, when developing an application, we have two scenarios. You are working on the same project with multiple people, and you need to work at the same time. So you don't want, person A to work on a feature, and then person B has to wait for the person A to finish that feature and then send them the archive. So this is basically the main advantage of Git. You can both work at the same time, and then after you have finished your changes, you can merge them together and have the application, in this case, with both features. And the second scenario, obviously, when you're developing an application, you don't want to be afraid of losing your code, in the sense that if you write a piece of code that, let's say, has a bug and you don't know how to fix it or something like that, you can easily go back to any point in time in which you have committed to that project, such that you can start investigating where the bug started from and so on. So basically, you have a versioning system without duplicating files. So you don't have to, copy the applications folder and then, rename it to version 1.0 and so on. You will also need to have a GitHub account for this contest. You will send your code, if I'm not mistaken, via GitHub repository. So what's the deal with GitHub? Basically, Git is your versioning system, and GitHub is, so to say, a remote. So basically, you can sync your changes with a remote server in the same way that your photos are synced with iCloud or with Google Photos, let's say. So Git is a local thing. GitHub is the remote server in which you can push your changes. You also have GitHub alternatives like Bitbucket, GitLab, and so on. But for indie devs and even for some companies, GitHub is used. Good. So to create your GitHub account, again, you will be able to click on this link when you receive the presentation. It's just github.com/signup. I will also show you, after we finish all the slides, a brief demo on how GitHub works in the browser. We have the first concept of Git, which are repositories. Basically, it's like, you can think of it like a folder. It's your entire project and all of its files that you want to be tracked. For example, if you have a project with 3 files, with 3 files of code, let's say, you will track those files of code. If you've noticed, if you've played around in some projects, you can see that you also have a build folder. Usually the build folder won't be part of the repository because that can be generated on any machine that has the same compiler and so on. So you don't need to track that. Usually the build files are not tracked in a repository. And the repository contains a few things. So I've said the files that you have. It also is sort of a group for other Git features, such as commits, branches, and pull requests. And you need to keep in mind that repositories, as I've written on the slide, are not a GitHub specific thing. They are a Git concept. So you have repositories also in Bitbucket, in GitLab, and so on. I will also demo everything when we build the Flutter project, so you don't have to worry about that. The other concept we will see are branches. Basically, what's the point with branches? Each repository has a main branch, which is named main or master, which is the main branch of the repository. Basically, all the commits go to that branch. But if you are working in a team and have developed a feature and multiple people are working in this repository, you don't want all of the people to commit to the main repository at the same to the main branch at the same time, because that kind of breaks the flow. So what you want to do is to create a branch for your features. So let's say if you are developing a feature, you will create a branch with the feature name. You will push the commits and code changes to that branch, and then you will merge it in the main branch or in the designated branch of your project. Usually, you will merge it in the branch from which you started from. A branch is also a copy of all the commits that of the branch that you started from. So if you start a feature branch from the main branch at point A, you will have all the commits until the point A in your branch. You will develop your feature in that branch, so you'll have extra commits, and then you will add those commits to the main branch from which you've started from. In IntelliJ, for example, this is how your Git log looks like. You can see each branch has a unique color. You can see in this case, I think the main branch is the purple one, which is the longest one on the left. And then you have feature branches that start from a certain point and are merged back into the main branch. You can also see the commit messages, which also contain, in this case, some ticket numbers, so the hashtags. You also have the name of the person that committed that commit and also the date and time. You also have a few tags. You can see here origin release, origin and master, and so on. You can also tag a commit. Usually tagging commits happens when you release stuff. So you want to have like a tag with version 1.0 and so on. Good. So until now, we have a little problem. We have the main branch that contains everything, and we have the branch which we've created for our feature that contains some extra commits. How do we get those commits back into the main branch? So basically, how do we add our feature to the main flow of the project? And here we have pull requests that basically help us do this thing. Usually, if you are working alone and prefer to work on branches, you would just merge them. But if you are working in a team, you will need pull requests. And what's the deal with those pull requests? Well, to add your commits to the main branch, as I've said, you need to merge it. But if you are working in a team, you would usually like your colleagues or peers to review that code so that you are quite sure that everything is fine. So you will make a pull request. Your colleagues will see the changes that you've made. So basically the code, the commit messages, and so on. They will take a look on that code. They will have an option to comment on each line of your code. And then after they approve the pull request, it can be merged in the main branch. If they deny it, you will have to take a look at the comments that they've left and fix them, and then the process repeats. So they'll review again, and after everything is fine, they'll merge it. Good. By the way, if you have any questions, you can stop me at any time, and we'll try to figure them out together. Okay. Good. We also have another nice thing. This is a bonus. It's quite a complicated topic. We have CI/CD pipelines, which from this graph you can see like a brief illustration of how those works. Basically, you have your repository, and you have in it likely some unit tests. CI/CD pipelines work in the following manner. When you push a commit to your repository, you have a few triggers, which basically will run a few things on your code. And the usual structure of those triggers looks like this. You first have a test pipeline, which runs unit UI or integration tests. It can be each pipeline for each subsection or one that runs them all. Then you would have a build part where you basically take your code and your dependencies, you build them, and you sign them for the release in the case of mobile applications, because this is what we are talking about today. And then you will have a deploy pipeline, which deploys to your environment, staging, production, and so on. Good. So now, before we take a look in the browser at GitHub and how repositories look like and so on, if you have any questions, this is the time to ask them. I know, or if I was too fast through those like Git points, let's say, we can go back on any one of them you would like. If not, I will move my browser to this screen and I will show you a little bit of GitHub. Okay, so let's go into GitHub really quick. Okay, so this is how GitHub looks like when you open it. You have here a sign up button where you can create your account. So if you press on sign up, you have a nice like UI where you can create your account. I obviously already have an account. It is free to have an account, so you should use it. If we go to GitHub when I am logged in, you can take a peek here. You have your repositories on the left, the stuff you follow on the middle, and other things on the right. If you click on your profile, you will see your public profile. So basically, if I take this link and go here, this is what you can see. There are two types of repositories in GitHub. You have public repositories that anyone can see. So basically, if you go on my profile, you can see those repositories. And if you are signed in, you can see here I have 192 repositories. So basically, the difference, so 160, I think, or something like that, are private repositories. Good. Let's take a look in this repository, let's say. Good. So this is your repository. You have some extra features from GitHub, which are issues, actions, projects, and so on. This is basically your code. A small mention that is really important: when you have your project in a folder, you should initialize Git in that folder, not in its parent folder. So your GitHub repository should look like this. Sometimes some Git repositories have one single folder here and then the code. That is not correct. You should have directly the files that are in your project here. So the subfolders and so on, but you should not have one single folder here. Good. If we take a look at the commits, we can see basically the history of the project. We have the commit hash here, which we can copy and go back to it whenever we want from our local Git. So from IntelliJ or from your terminal and so on. And let's take a peek at this commit. This is how a commit looks like. Basically, with green, you have the lines of code that you have added. With yellow, you have the lines of code that you have modified. Let's take a peek here. And with red, you have the lines of code that you have deleted. In this case, yellow would be the line 45 because it was deleted and basically added, but it looks different, so it's edited. That's why it's with yellow here. Good. For the part of CI/CD, we have a few pipelines here. You can see they are defined here on the left. So basically, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pipelines: checkup, start, lint, and so on. A pipeline, basically, as you've seen on the slides, basically it works like that. You push the change that you want, and then the trigger will run the pipeline that you have defined. Let's see this one. So basically, it has a set of steps. I won't go like too in depth with this one because you probably are more interested in the part with the repository and the basic things. You have the README, which appears here, which is a GitHub feature. The fact that it is basically in the root page of your repository. Good. Okay, I think we can move on to the Flutter part. Let's move this. out of the way. Good. So for the Flutter part, which I think will be more interesting for you, we will see the Flutter basics. We will build a simple to-do application that basically does some API calls to a server. So what can you build with Flutter? Has anyone here used Flutter before? Okay, I assume no. Basically, Flutter is a UI toolkit, and with it you can create some mobile applications that look and feel basically the same on any mobile device. So it looks the same both on Android, on iOS. You can also have it in a web version and in desktop versions as well. The main advantage of this is you have a single code base. You don't have to rewrite your features every time you choose to deploy to a new platform. So in the case of native mobile applications, for Android, you would have a code base. For iOS, you would have another code base, and you would have to implement each feature twice. This is the thing that basically Flutter and React Native and other frameworks like this solve. You have a single code base, you do your thing there, and it works with very low configuration on any platform that you choose. Flutter is not really a new thing. I mean, it's newer compared to like programming languages, let's say, or other web frameworks like Angular and so on. But it is already used in a pretty set of important applications, such as the BMW car application, Alibaba, and so on. You can see them on this slide. You can also see more applications that are developed with Flutter if you go to flutter.dev-showcase. Again, you have the link on the slide. And also you can see a comparison with React Native in the right bottom part of the slide. You can see the Google searches. So basically, it's the interest over time. It's scaled to 100%, and you can see that Flutter is close to the top, while React Native being at a 50% rate. So basically, for each search of React Native on Google, you have 2 searches for Flutter. Good. So how does Flutter work? From like a very simplistic point of view, it has a rendering engine, which is named Skia, which basically helps us achieve that thing that I've told you earlier, that look and feel that is the same on all platforms. The idea is when you have an Android or iOS application, when you write an input, so if you do the same thing, the Android one will look on Android with the Android components, and on iOS with the iOS component development kit. So they will look different. The idea with Flutter is having this custom Skia engine. If you write like an input, it will look exactly the same, both on Android or on iOS, because it's a custom renderer. And currently the Flutter team is basically changing the rendering engine, is switching from Skia to Impeller. This change has already happened, so to say, for iOS. iOS applications since Flutter 3.16, I think, use the Impeller engine, which basically is a little bit faster and better. With Skia, the iOS applications had a little bit of animation lag. So when you would have a menu that slides and so on, you could see some frames that are dropped and things like that. With Impeller, in theory, those things have been fixed. For Android, it's still using Skia under the hood, but they are working on porting that to Impeller as well. Again, this is the renderer for Flutter. We are not talking about native applications here. Okay, so how does the development environment look like for Flutter? I think you have seen yesterday for a native Android application. Let's take a quick look at this schema for Flutter. We basically have to install Flutter. You have the link there. It's docs flutter dev get started install. Then you can use the IDE of your choice. You can either use Android Studio, which is the one on the left, or IntelliJ, which is the one on the right. or you can also use VS Code, but you would also need Android Studio in order to have the emulators to test your app on. Then you would push your code to the version control system. In today's demo, we will use GitHub. Then you would have a set of pipelines that automatically take button and play with your application. Good. Any questions? Okay, so we'll move to the more interesting part, which is basically building that application that we've talked about earlier. Okay, first off, the API that we will use was on the slides, the link for it. It's a public GitHub repo, which is basically containing some to-dos. You can see here Postman. This is a tool with which you can test APIs. Good. So we have a few main things. We can get a list of to-dos. We can add a to-do. You can see we are sending this JSON to the server, and it's giving us back the same thing, but with an ID. You can see I'm sending it here with a ID that is ignored, which is 100, and I'm receiving back 897. We can get a to-do by its ID, and we can update a to-do by its ID as well. We are basically using this update in order to toggle this done boolean to true or false based on if the user has completed the to-do or not. Good. Now if I jump to IntelliJ, I will create a new Flutter project, so I can click on this new project. If you have the Flutter plugin installed in IntelliJ, you will have this Flutter option here. We'll click on next. You will have to pick your project title, so to say. So let's say to do Flutter demo live. It's an application. Here you can choose the organization that you want to use. This field basically the underlying code that is generated by Flutter needs to have an organization such that you can deploy it to the stores. So if you don't plan on deploying your application to the stores, you can leave this as is. If you want to deploy your applications to Google Play or App Store, you will need to have a unique organization name here. Usually you would buy a domain and you just reverse it. So if you have dinu.com, you would type here com.dinu because that usually needs to be unique in the stores. This is the identifier with which each store basically sends your application to the users. Good. I'll leave it as is. You can leave the Android and iOS languages as is and the platforms as well. So we will just click on create. So it wants to be underscore stuff. I'm sorry. Okay, it should have no problem now. Good. It is creating our base Flutter project. And now we can see that some files are on the left side in the file tree with red. What's the problem with them? Basically, we have already a Git repository initialized. This is the Flutter CLI that has initialized this Git repository. If you take a look in Git, we have, I think this is a bug from IntelliJ because it's showing commits from another project, but that's no problem. We have here this master, but we don't have this repository on GitHub. So if I try to search this to do Flutter demo live here, so let's put it like this. I don't have it. You will see a 404. So what we need to do from the menu on Windows, it will be like here. On macOS, it's here. I will click on Git. I will choose GitHub, and then I will share project on GitHub. Let's. I think it has a little issue, so let's try and recreate this. I will just add a 2 and let's do like that. Let's create it. Good. So now that that is fixed, I'm sorry for that. We can directly do that same thing from here. If you take a look at version control, now I should have no commits here. I also have the option to create a Git repository, or I can directly create a Git repository and share it on GitHub. So if I go on version control, share project on, and then select GitHub, you also have the option for other services here, but GitHub is already integrated in IntelliJ. You can pick the name that you want for the project on GitHub to be. So in this case, let's do dashes because this is the naming convention. And you have a toggle here for private or public. I will keep this public. So basically you uncheck that. By default, it will create it as private. Here you can choose the files that you want to be tracked. So basically the files that you want to be in your Git repository and sync to GitHub. So I will just add all of them. You can see that some stuff is ignored. So in this case, I have Android, iOS, lib, Linux, and so on. But if you take a look in the file tree, on the left, I also have .dart tool or .idea. Those are not tracked. As I've said earlier, in this case, those are config files that are specific to my editor, so I don't want to have them on GitHub. How do you do this? Basically, you have a file that is called .gitignore, and you tell here to Git basically what stuff to ignore. So you can have directories, or you can have any file that ends with this and so on. Basically, those are kind of regex. Good. Now I have my first commit here. If I click on it, I can see the files that have been changed. If I double click on this file, I can see what has changed in it. Now, if I go here and change the name because I've done it with dashes, so to do Flutter demo live, I think 2. Let's just search it. It's right here. I can see the commit that I have pushed to GitHub, which is basically the same one here. If I do a change, let's say I change this Flutter demo to hello hardcore 4.0. You can see on the left you have this like different color. If you click on it, you can see what has changed on that line. If I change multiple lines, don't worry about the errors. You can see that the line gets longer. Good. Now, in order to commit this change, so basically, if you don't commit anything, you don't have a Git repository. It's like distributing archives or doing the thing with create a new folder and name it version 1.0. The idea is to commit stuff. So after you have changed something, you need to commit it. So basically, you need to tell Git, hey, keep in mind that I have changed this. So in order to commit, you do Command K on Mac or Control K for Windows. You will have this view where you have basically the file that you have changed. So you have the change list here. If you double click on the file like I've done earlier, you can see what has changed. So in this case, I have changed this string that is highlighted to this other string that is also highlighted on the right. I need to type my commit message here, so you can see it says commit message. I will just have it as changed up title. I press on commit. I have this commit here. Now, I have committed this, and I have a perfectly working Git repository. But if we take a look on GitHub, and I refresh this page, I don't have that commit. Why? Basically, I have not pushed it to the remote. So the local Git instance has those commits. You can see this one is tagged with origin master, which means all the commits under this one are already synced to the origin, which in this case is GitHub. And this one only has the tag master. So this one has not been synced yet. In order to sync them, I will do Command Shift K. And on Windows, you can do Control Shift K. I can see the change list again. I can also double click on it and do the same thing, and I will push. After I push, you will see that it has been automatically tagged with origin master. And if I take a look on GitHub and refresh, I will also see that commit. If I click on it, I can see the same thing that I've seen in IntelliJ, that this has changed. Keep in mind that you have those expand up and expand down buttons if you want to see the entire file. By default, this view will only show you the fragment of code that has been changed. Good. Also, keep in mind you need to first commit stuff and then push it. You can't push stuff directly. So if I do this 5.0, hope to see you in the next year. If I do a push, I don't have that commit, okay? Because I did not commit anything. So I need to first commit it, change the title to 5.0, let's say. And then if I try to push it, I can see it here. Also, you can locally commit multiple commits, let's say. So if I change this to 6.0, I can commit again. When I push, I will have both commits. So you can push multiple commits at the same time. There's no problem. You don't need to like commit and push one after the other. You can commit, and then push all of them. So I will push that now. Good. Do you have any questions? Okay, now let's start developing the to-do app. First off, I will open Device Manager. I have here already an emulator that I have created. I will start it. I can close this window. I will see the emulator here on the right. You can see this is how the application will look like. I have the list of to-dos. It's really simple, and I can also add to-dos here. Good. So now if we close this, if it would cooperate, but that's no problem, I can start the application that was created by default by Flutter. So I've clicked on the run button here at the top. Both IntelliJ and Android Studio have support for this. You only have to get the plugins for Flutter and Dart. So if you take a look in plugins and marketplace and search for Flutter, you basically need this one. So it's the one from Google, and the Dart one, the one from JetBrains. Flutter uses Dart the same way as Angular uses TypeScript. Good. So we have the application here. This is the application that that was created by default by Flutter. So it's the starter project, if you want to name it like that. It's just a simple counter. So if you press on this plus, the counter goes up. You have here some comments from them, but we'll just delete them for now. Basically, they explain you how state works and so on. If you have used React in the past, this will be very similar with the state stuff. Let's do this faster. Good. Now for the Flutter structure, everything is a widget. So everything that you see on the screen is a widget or a set of widgets. You can group widgets. You'll see later how to do that. Like any program, the Flutter app has a main, which is basically the starting point of the application. If we take a look at this main, we have a single function here, which is run app, which is a function provided by the Flutter package, which receives a widget. We have two types of widgets. We have stateless widgets and we have stateful widgets. Both are illustrated in this Flutter example. The idea with stateless widgets, you cannot change the state in them. So basically, this build part will never change. This is useful for the framework to know that, hey, once I render this, unless something over me changes, I don't have to re-render this. So the idea is it's it helps the framework know which part of the app to re-render such that it can save frames and have a smooth experience for the user. Good. Stateful widgets, on the other hand, have fields that can change. In this case, this counter, which is basically the thing that is shown here. It is a stateful widget because if I press on this plus, I have here, I can see here the counter that increments. So it goes from 0 to anything, basically. Good. Stateful widgets have two parts. We have the main class, which is basically a stateless widget that has some extra stuff, which is this part. That is the actual state of the thing. So this is basically boilerplate. Here you only add extra variables that you want this component to receive or to have. In this case is the title. You can see the title is basically this one. It does not have anything to do with the counter that we are talking about here. This is the thing that is received here. Look, so you have my home page. Yeah, so it's this part that receives this title, which is this field, basically provided by this constructor. So you can see here you have this required this title. This required basically means that I cannot use this component without providing that. You can see it is shouting at me, hey, you need to provide me a title. Good. This is the state managing part of the application. Basically, to change this, I need to call a special function, which is setState. This tells the framework, hey, I have changed the variables that I provide in this code block. Make sure to re-render the stuff that depends on them. For example, so you can see this is working right now. Yeah, if I take this counter and put it outside of setState and I save the application, Flutter has hot reload. So basically, if I save the application, the code changes are already, on the phone. If I press this, now you can see the 31 is stuck. Basically, the counter increments because if I print the counter, let's make it a string. It's with underscore, my bad. So if I press on plus and take a look here, you can see I have 54, 55, 58, and so on, but the UI does not change. Yeah, so the counter increments, but the UI does not re-render. This is because I have not used setState. If I duplicate this code and when Flutter will refresh this, you will see that I will see 77 here because it refreshed the page due to the Flutter CLI. But as I've said, you need to keep this in a set state. And you can see the beauty of Git right now. I don't have to control Z every time or 5 times until I get back to the original stuff. I can just click on this, press on the arrow back button, and I have the set state stuff back. You can see when I delete code, I have this gray bubble here, which shows me what was previously on that line and has now been deleted. So if I rerun this, it will be working just fine again. Good. And now let's do our to-do app. Everything that we care about, at least for now, is in the lib folder. This is where the Dart code is expected to be. We also have the Android and iOS folders. Those folders basically hold platform-specific stuff, like configurations and so on. Those will mainly be used when you need to publish your app to Google Play or Apple App Store. So for the scope of this demo, we will only be playing with stuff in lib. Good. Now let's delete everything from this file because we will be building something new. When you are building your own project, you can just take this part and delete this and keep the rest. and you will just need to change the name here. But I will do it from scratch so that you can understand better how stuff works. So as I've said, you will have a main function, which is the starting point of your application. So void main, and I will need to run something in this main. In order to run something in this main, I will need to have, as I've said before, everything is a widget. I will need to have a widget. In my case, I will have a stateful widget because I will need to do that page change thing that you've seen previously. So I have this bottom navigation bar, which is to-do list and add to do, and I need to change the pages. So let's go back to our application. I will create a stateful widget. We have a nice shortcut so that we don't have to write all that boilerplate by hand. STFUL, which creates a stateful widget. You can see here, new stateful widget. If I want to make it a stateless widget, I just write ST-less. So basically stateless and stateful. Yeah. So if I type stateful and press enter, I will have this boilerplate that is automatically generated by the IDE for me. I will name this to-do app, and we have a few errors. What's the deal with those? We have not imported anything. We need to import our package that will render our widgets. We have two options. We can either import Cupertino, which is the design of the iOS apps, or we can import Material, which is in theory the design of the Android apps, but Google's trying to convince us that everything is okay to be Material. So I will use Material in this case. Usually every time you will do Material, but if you want your app to have a closer look and feel to the iOS stuff, you will do the Cupertino import. Good. Now, if I save this, I will have a big red error because I need to do some more stuff. In run app, in main, I need to do run app. So I will run the app same as before, and I will do to do app. Now, the idea is telling me that I can use const here because I don't, because this can be a constant. So basically Flutter can know that this part will never change, only this part may change using set state. So usually or from time to time, you will have those warnings. They are not errors that you can use the const keyword for your widgets. Good. And now, the bread and butter for the app will be in this to-do app set state part, which basically will contain the two the bottom menu bar and the list of pages that I want to display in my app. So if I go back here, the first thing that a Flutter app needs to have, so this is mandatory, needs to be a Material app wrapper. So I will have a Material app widget that needs to have some stuff. So if we let IntelliSense give us some hints, first off, we need to have a title. So I will name this my, or we can name it to-do app. We need to have a theme. I will just use a basic theme. You can, if we have time, we will take a look in the in a demo application that I have that uses theme changes. So basically, if you change this variable at runtime from a dark theme to a white theme, basically that's how you get the app with two themes. So we'll have theme data, and the primary color of the app, we'll keep it simple and we will keep it blue. So primary swatch, which is basically some kind of a special color, we will do blue. Good. Now you can see this line I have. So you can see for this Material app, I have title and theme. They are on separate lines. But for this theme, I have this theme data thing, and it has Similarly to the material app, this primary swatch property, like title, but it is on the same line. If you want to have indent for stuff that looks like this instead of this, all you need to do is put a comma here and reformat your file. Basically, when Flutter sees a comma, it will do a new line. This is just like a gimmick, so to say, but sometimes it's quite useful. Also, it automatically adds this. You can see it has a theme data kind of a comment here. I cannot delete this. This is just for like ease of code navigation. Good. The main thing that a material app needs to have is the home property, which is basically what it will render on the screen. So let's do a home, and we need to have a scaffold. This is basically like a canvas. And this thing has, again, 3 properties. You don't have to worry if you don't know what those properties are. You can also always use the IntelliSense, or you can Google this widget that you need. Their documentation is really good, so you can see what each thing needs to receive. In this case, I will need to have an app bar. So basically now I am building this section, the to-do app title. So the app bar, this app bar will receive an app bar instance, as the IntelliSense tells us, and it will be a title, to-do app. This needs to be, I think, like this. Oh, my bad, it's actually a widget. So it needs to be a text widget. Let's also close this and let's format it really quickly. You can see the const error again. Now I have this app bar basically, but I still have some errors because this scaffold also needs a body. So let's get inside the scaffold. Let's type body and let's do a simple text and let's say hello world. Now, this is still not enough. Let's take a look why. I think it just needed a restart. Stuff does not work sometimes from the first try. So now we can see the to-do app bar and the hello world that I've written here. If I change this and hit save, I will see the new text. So let's just go back to to-do app, and the hello world one is this one, obviously. If I want to center this, I have a special widget, center, and it will take as a child that text, and now it's centered. So basically we can say that Flutter does not have the how to center a div interview question. Good. Now, in order to achieve this menu bar stuff, it's really easy. We have another thing besides body for the scaffold, which is bottom navigation bar. And it will receive an instance of bottom navigation bar, which also on its own receives some stuff. And for this step, I will need to create a list. I will need to do some kitchen work, let's say. I will need to know on which page I am currently on so that I can swap pages. So I'll do an integral that will keep track of that. So I'll have selected page here. And let's also do a list of widgets, which basically are the pages that I am displaying in the body of the scaffold. So let's do a list of widget. And let's say screens. Let's name it. If I can type. Good. Now currently this is empty, but let's do something like this. Let's have hello world screen 1 and hello world screen 2. Good. Now I can tell to this bottom navigation bar that I want to have 2 items. So I will tell him, hey, I have a list of stuff. Let's do something better than this is suggesting. So const bottom navigation bar item, because that's the list that he is expecting. And this will be a list of bottom navigation bar items that will have an icon and a label. So basically the stuff that is rendered below. So in this case, let's do okay, and for the label, let's do the to-do list text. If I save it, there's no problem. Let's do everything first. Let's put the add here, and let's have the add to-do label. So basically, I have now achieved to-do list and add to-do, the same thing as in the other example. You can see to-do list and add to-do. Now, if I change this, nothing will happen because I did not tell it when or how to change the pages. First off, you can see that always the first to-do list is selected. You can see it's a little bit purple. In order to tell it to change the highlight, so basically it should be aware of which page it is on. You have the current index property, which will receive this selected page variable that I've told you before. This will keep track of the current page that is displayed. Let's also change the color if you want to see it better. There's also blue. So if I save it, you can see now the to-do list is blue. This still won't work because I'm not doing anything when the user clicks on this add to do. So I will need to have an on-tap function. This bottom navigation bar receives an on-tap callback, and we can define it like this. It's just a simple function, and it will receive the index that was tapped. So if I print this index here and save it, if I press on add to do, you can see it has the index 1. If I press on to do list, it has the index 0. So those are numbered from 0. So this is the 0th item. This is the first item, basically. Good. Now, in order to change this page, I can go to the body and I can tell it from the screens array, show me the selected page element. So basically now when selected page changes, the body will show a different thing. If I save it, it won't work. It's saying now hello world screen 1 instead of just hello world. So it's basically the first item of this array. If I click on add to do, it does nothing, obviously, because this on tap function only prints this index, does not change the selected page thing. Good. So I need to do set state. Selected page is the index. Keep in mind, if you just do this, again, nothing will happen because the framework does not know that this field has changed and cannot re-render the screen. So now if I click on add to do, the page will be changed, and also you can see that the add to do button is now highlighted in blue, as I've said on this line here. So I can change those pages, which is pretty nice. You can also see that we have a debug banner. You can toggle this off with debug show checked mode banner property of the material app, and you just set it to false, you save it, and it is gone. Good. Now we have a small problem. Let's say this on tap is not very beautiful. We need to take this and let's name it. Let's define a function for this. So on menu item tapped, and I will define it here, which is basically this. So we keep the body of the function the same. So it will keep working. Let's restart it just to make sure. So you can see everything is fine. Please keep in mind, this is a variable. So basically the variable on menu item tabbed is passed to the on tab, which after that is being called. So you don't have to call this function. You can see, thankfully, the IDE gives me an error if I try to call the function here. For example, in React or other frameworks that are more web-oriented, so basically JavaScript stuff, you can call them like this, and you would have like bugs because this function will be called when this code is like, if you wish, parsed, and it will basically call this on tab every time it is re-rendered. You don't want that. You want this to be called when this scaffold decides that the item has been tapped. So you need to pass it as a reference. Basically, I've just passed the address of the variable that holds this function. I know it can be a little bit tricky. You can write it as I've written it initially like this, but you should not mix logic with UI stuff. So you should have them a little bit separated, especially because in Flutter, you have those files that can contain both. In Android, you've seen that you have that XML that contains basically what is rendered on the UI, and the Java part or Kotlin that contains the logic. So for Flutter, you should have this in mind to keep them a little bit separated. Good, and this is the main file of our application. Now I will create two separate files, each one that will contain a widget for each page. So a widget that will contain the page that is basically the to-do list, and another one that will contain the form in which we can add to-dos. So I will go into lib. I will click on, or I will right click, new Dart file, and let's do add to-do. And let's also do the other one, new Dart file, to-do list. Good. Let's first do the add to-do one. If we want to do the add to-do one, we will have a stateful widget because we need to add the to-do. So let's do stateful add to-do. I did a mistake. If you mistype that in the first try, you will need to redo it because it autofills multiple stuff. You can see the type here for the state and also here. So you need to be careful. And let's go into to-do list. It will also be a stateful widget. Let's name it to-do list. Oops, I did the same thing. Good. Let's import material. And now let's take those two things. So hello world screen one. Let's go to add to do. And let's place them here. Instead of a comma, now I will need to do this because I'm returning it. Let's also add the const so that it's to-do list. You can see that I can call my widget. Also, this is not needed because I have already added it here. And add to do. Good. So now I will have the exact same thing, but it will be a little bit easier for me to write the code for those separate pages. Good. Now for adding the to-dos. So basically I will first build the second screen. Let's, instead of center, have a container. This is basically like a div, if you want to think about it like that. Almost every widget has the child property, so every widget can have children, either one or more. For example, you have column or row, they have multiple children, also stack. But stuff like container, padding, and so on have a single child because they are not something that can expand. You can see I have child here. If I do text and do hello from container, I can save it and I will have hello from container here at the top. If I do a column, you can see I have an error here because it is expecting a list of children. So I can do children and then inside there I can do my text and I can save it. it will look the same, but here I can add multiple instances of this text. In the container, I can only have one in the child. Good. I also have some align properties like main axis alignment, and it will be main axis alignment, and I can do center and space around, space between, and so on. Basically, the flex properties of CSS. So let's do this. They will be in this page, they will be aligned with space between them. I can do end, I think, and they will be at the bottom. Start is at the top. Center will just center them, and so on. You can do the same thing with row, but now instead of looking like this, they will be horizontal, and this will also not fit on this screen, so you will have a yellow warning here. Good. Now let's go back to that container. And this container, let's give it some padding. It has a padding property. Basically for padding and for margin, I also have margin. You can see here. I can use the same thing. So I can have const edge insets. This is basically telling it how to apply this padding. I can have all and 16 if I want to do it quickly, and margin. I can also have edge insets. This is basically telling it how to spread this property. Padding obviously is inside the object, margin is outside of the object. It works the exact same way as the CSS properties work. Good. Inside this container, I can have column because I will have two inputs as I've seen in this as we've seen in this example. I have two inputs and a button. So let's build the same thing. I will need to have a column. I will need to have two text fields. Sorry, I need to have first the children property. And you can see here I have this title and description placeholders. Let's do the same thing. I'll have a decoration, input decoration, and label text. And this one will be title of the to-do basically. And let's have another text field that does the same thing, but is description. If I save this now, I have the title and the description. Good. Let's add a const so that it does not yell at me. Good. And now let's also do that button. Buttons in Flutter are elevated button. We have a child that is basically the text of the button. So let's have the text add to do. Good. And the on press is basically the stuff that we want to do when the user presses that button. So in this case, let's say hello, and you can encounter this error, invalid constant value, which may seem like, what is this? I don't have any const here. If you have this problem, you need to go up the widget tree. So in this case, the parent of this elevated button is this column. You can take a look at those colored lines on the left. You can see that I have this const here. Basically, that prevents me from doing anything that is not a constant in those widgets. So because I have this on press, I will need to remove it right now. I will have those warnings here. I can quickly fix them. And now I will have my print. Now, when I press on this to do, I will have that hello in the console. That obviously is not enough for now because we want to add those to-dos. We want to send them to the server. Let's also do the same thing that I've done in the main file. Let's have a method for this. So let's have save to do. Let's do it here. we will do the same thing. Obviously, it will work the same. Good. Now, in order to read the text that a user has written in those text fields, I will need some controllers. So I will need to do text editing controller, which is basically a way with which I can access the stuff that is in this text field. So I can do text editing controller, title controller, text editing controller. Good, I can duplicate this. I will name it description controller. And all is well. Now, if I go to text field, I can have this controller assigned to this text field. So I can say controller, and I will assign it the title controller. If I have now the same problem, invalid constant value, I need to remove this const. It will make me move it lower than the like 3 if you want, which is this input decoration. Let's do the same thing here. Let's move the const here from the start, and let's take this controller, let's put it down, and let's do description controller. Good. Now, in this save to do, I can actually print what the user has written. So title controller, and it is text. And let's also do description controller. Let's save it. And if I write something here, and in the other one, let's do that. If I print them, you can see they are right here. That is very good. I can read the stuff that it is written in there. And now you can see that I need to provide description, done, ID, and title. For ID, I will just provide 1 because it will be overwritten by the backend anyway. Title, which is title controller text. I also need to do description, which is description controller text. And the done, which will be always false, obviously, because when you add a to do, it is to be done. So I don't have to autofill it with true. Good. Now that I have this this to do object, let's print it. I can do the toJSON function if I save it like that. Let's see if this works. And you can see I have something that resembles a JSON, which is this object, but it is not actually a JSON because you can see it does not have commas around those parameters. It's basically a fancy toString. In order to actually have a JSON here, I will need to use a function provided by Flutter, which is JSON encode, and then pass toJSON into it. If I save it again and do add to do, you can see that this is a real JSON because it has those commas around strings. Good, very nice. In order to send this to the server, I will need to use a library, the one that can actually send requests. So if we take a look here, let's do a quick Google search, Flutter HTTP library. You can see pub.dev, which is basically similar to npm.js. We have here all the packages that we can use in our Flutter applications. So this HTTP package basically helps us send the HTTP requests. Good. So if we go into installing, sorry, I clicked on something wrong. We can see that we have ways to add it with Flutter, with Dart, which basically will add this line to our dependencies. Let's copy that. Let's go back to the editor. Let's go back to this file, which basically holds all of our dependencies. And if we take a look at the dependencies part, under Cupertino icons, we can add this HTTP package. We have here also dev dependencies and other stuff, but I won't go into them. Then, in order to actually pull this dependency, we need to do a thing that is similar to npm install, which in this case will be pub.pubget. So if we do pubget, the IDE will automatically run this command for us and pull that package. Good. Now in save to do, we can actually send that request. So let's change this to an async function. Basically, you can't do like synchronous calls to a backend server on the in a function because obviously it won't respond instantly. So you need to have an async function that will send those requests. I need to also import the HTTP package here. I will do this by hand because I will give it a name so that I can use it easier. Package HTTP and http.dart, and I will name it HTTP. Is similar to the Python syntax here. Good. Now that we have all of that kitchen work done, we can do HTTP. I will need to post this to do to the backend. I will do a post obviously here. I will need to provide it the URL of the backend. So I need to do URI parse. And let me just quickly copy paste the URL of that. Good. Let's do some comma stuff. Actually, that's like that. Good. Now that I have provided it the URL, I need to provide the body. So you can see in Postman, when I want to post a to-do, so it's a post here, it's a post here. I have that URL. I need to provide this body, which is basically the actual to-do. So I will say here body, and let's do JSON encode. Let's just copy paste this part. I missed the J here. Let's do the comma. Now I'm doing the same request as here. I also need to do one extra thing, and this is basically done. I need to tell it that this is of type JSON, because otherwise it won't know how to parse it. This is, for example, if you have a Spring backend, you won't need to do this, but in this case, this one is in a nest. So I need to tell it that it will receive a JSON. So content type, and it will be application JSON as always. And I will also need to tell it how it is encoded. So we will use UTF-8 so that we can also do some Romanian in there. Good. Now that I have saved this to do in the backend, if we want to say it like that, we can let's put this in a response variable so that we can do some other stuff later. This await basically stops the code here until this post is completed and the backend responds. So in this response, I will have whatever the response the backend sends, which in this case is this to do. So now if the response was, or if the request was successful, so I'm checking the status code of this. It's 201 because I'm saving stuff. Mounted is a special property of Flutter, which basically says, hey, if the user is still on this page, otherwise I will have some issues. Let's do title controller clear because we want after we save those to become empty. And let's also do description controller clear. So now if I click on this add to do, after the request has been completed, I will have those fields emptied. Good. Let's also do a nice message. So let's do a scaffold messenger of context. This context is basically the context of the screen. It's similar to the context you have seen yesterday at the IBM demo. And let's do a snack bar, and I will here I will have a text that will basically say to do saved. Good. So now if I save a to do, test to do one, test to do description, and add them, I can see this toast that says to do saved. If I take a look and do a quick request at get to do's and make this a little bit bigger, I can see that I have this to-do added. Good. Now all we need to do is read those to-dos, and this webinar is basically done. In the to-do list widget, if we go back here, currently we have hello world screen. I would like to have the list of to-dos. So as in anything, I will have final list to-do, which will hold my to-dos, which is this. I need to do the import. And now I just need to read, so to say, my to-dos from the backend. So let's do void load to-dos. It will obviously be another async call. And let's actually build the let's build the UI part first, so to say. If we don't have any to-dos, so if the list of to-dos is empty, let's do loader. Flutter is pretty nice, and we have a built-in loader. It's called circular progress indicator. And if we have a to-do, or at least one to-do, let's do the list of to-dos. So we will have a list view builder. The idea with this is basically if I have a really long list, it will only render the stuff that is on the screen plus 1 or 2 items. So if I have 100 to-dos and I am like at the half of the list, the only thing that will be rendered by the framework will be to do 49, 50, 51, and 52. While the user scrolls, the rest of them are rendered. If I would have had a column and I would have mapped these to-dos to a to-do widget, let's say, then all of them would have been rendered at first, and that basically would like take up a lot of resources from the user's phone. So that's not really good, because then you would get reviews like, hey, your application is bad because my battery is draining fast and stuff like that. So you would always like to use stuff like this, list view builder, grid view builder, and so on, such that you can generate or tell the framework to generate the UI while the user is interacting with it. Good. I have a mandatory parameter that I need to give it, which is the item builder, which is basically the stuff that tells it how to build this this list. But first, I will also provide the item count so that the framework can know how many items I'm rendering. So let's do to-dos length. If I don't provide this, while the user scrolls, the index, if you want to think about it like that, will grow indefinitely. And when this item builder would like to try and build that item, I would not have stuff in this list to build, and then I would get an error. Good. In this item builder, this is a function, so it's a callback if you wish. It receives a context and index, and I need to return the child that I want to be rendered for that position. Let's get the to-do from the list so that we can interact with it easier. To-dos of index. This is the to-do that I want to currently render. And let's return the actual widget, which will be a list tile. You can do any type of child here, but I will do a list tile so that we can move faster through this. Let's do title, text, and we will have the to-do title. Let's do subtitle, will be the description. And let's also do a checkbox. If you take a look in this example, if we take a look at the to-do list, we have checkboxes, which basically can mark a to-do from done to not done, or vice versa. So we will have a trailing widget, which is a checkbox. Its check value will be to-do done, and it's on changed, which is another callback, which is called when the checkbox is toggled. It will be a function, we'll get a value, and with this value we will need to mark the to-do as done or as not done if the user toggles it the other way around. Let's do an update to-do function that we don't have yet, but we will write it later, and it will receive a to-do and this value. I need to do this bang at the end in order to assure Flutter that this value will actually exist. And let's also set state to do done equals to value. This is called predictive UI. Basically, I am changing the UI before I am receiving the response from the backend, because if everything goes well, I can predict that this to-do will eventually have this value. So I don't need to wait until the backend gives me back the fact that this to-do has been marked with the value of this value. I can instantly change this for the user, and then if something goes wrong, I can revert this and tell the user, hey, something went wrong. But this would be, if you wish, an edge case. And I can, because if I don't do this, the user will click that, will have to wait a second or whatever amount of time until the backend responds, and then the checkbox will actually be checked. That's not very pleasant for the user. So I need to predict what will actually happen from the backend. And in this case, I can easily do this because it's just a checkbox. Let's do the update to do function. It receives the to do and the new value. So bool done, and we will do the backend call in here. Good. Now, at the moment, we don't have any to-dos loaded. So you can see we have this to-dos that is empty and it never changes. This is not good. We need to load this when the user enters this page. For this, we have a lifecycle hook. It's in its state. Let's do it right here. Let's call it superclass in its state. And let's also call the load to-dos function. Basically, when the user opens this app, this piece of code will be executed. I will execute the code in the load to-dos function. Let's, just to be safe, clear the to-dos list, because we don't want to duplicate those to-dos in the list if the user does some magic stuff and somehow calls this twice. Let's also do the same thing. So let's have a response, await HTTP, but instead of post this time, we will have a get. Let's also do the import. Let me take it from here. Good. HTTP, not that one. Get, the URL is the same. So it will be query parse. Good. You can see it's the same URL. You can see also we can see the loader now because we have not added anything to the to-dos array yet. The URL is the same, and you may wonder, well, how does this work differently than adding a to-do? Why is it receiving to-dos now? Because I'm doing a get request here. You can see this get. On the other page, I was doing a post request. Basically, you can think of it like being actually different functions, so to say. And if I get 200, this is no longer a 201 because I'm not creating resources, I'm only reading. Let's actually get what the backend has given us. I will now decode the JSON instead of encoding. You've seen on this one, I was encoding the JSON. Now I want to decode it, and I will do response body. Response body is basically this entire thing, this array of stuff, but in the form of JSON. So that's why I need to decode it. And I need to iterate through each of those such that I can actually create the to-do, because now I just have a list of strings. Those will be as strings, not objects. So I need to convert them to objects such that I can do this list and display them. Let's go back here. Let's for each item do a for each, and let's do to-dos, and we'll add them directly. I'll create the to-do similar to this part here, but instead of those, I will just read from the item data that the backend has given me. So this ID will be item and ID. I will need to access it like this because it's a JSON, so I can't do .id because the compiler, if you wish, won't know that I want that ID. So I need to do it like this. And I need to do the same thing for all of them. But instead of ID, I will obviously need to change them with what I have here. So the title will be title and the description will be description. Same for done, because I don't want to hard code them to false. Let's do done. Good. After this, basically I have mutated my list of to-dos, but my loader will still be visible because I need to do something that is not very legal. I need to do a set state with nothing in here, such that everything will be refreshed. Usually you will, instead of adding or mutating state directly like this, you will need to make a copy of this list, add everything to that list, then change this list to the temporary list that was here, and that you would do in the set state. I don't want to do set state for every add, because that would refresh or force a refresh of the renderer every time I add a to-do. And in this case, when I receive a list of, let's say, 100 to-dos, that's not good. You would obviously paginate it, but that's still not very good. And if I save it right now and do that, I will have my list of to-dos. Now, if I add a new to-do, so new to-do, new to-do, and add it, and go back to that, I will have my new to-do right here at the bottom. Good. So now if I take a look in Postman and send this request, I have that new to-do obviously there. I have it marked done as false. Now, if I toggle this and send another request here, I will have that marked as true, because I did that call when I checked this box and told the backend, actually I haven't done that. I need to write it, sorry. You can see it is false, I think, yeah. Okay, I need to also write this, I forgot. So to do done equals done. Let's take this piece from here because that's actually what I want. So that's that, and done like that. And let's do the backend call. I will actually do something similar to this. So I will take that. It will also be an async function. And now I will need to pass in here the ID of the to-do ID, and encode that to-do. Let's do to-do done also here because I want it before set state. Why do I have to do this? Because set state is also an async thing, even though you can't actually see it, and this will be executed before the state will be mutated. So I will send the done still as false if I do this to JSON before that. And now if I save it, the app will refresh. This will not be marked as done. When I mark it as done and I do another request, I will have it done as true. If I pick any other to-do, let's do that as well. Let's do the request, it's also true here. If I unmark it, let's do them both and send it, it will also be false. You can see if I mark it as done there, and I go to the other app, and let's refresh that page real quick, it will also be marked as done because it's calling the same endpoint in the same backend. Now I just need to do a commit, finished to do demo. Let's commit. You can also commit and push at the same time, but I'm showing you all the steps one by one. And I should be able to push it. Let's do it like that. And that's finished. IntelliJ is analyzing the code, whatever, you can uncheck those and the commit will be instant. Good. Do you have any questions? If not, obviously you can see the code. You will be able to take it from the public GitHub repository. You will be able to take a look there. You can also, if you have any questions, you can ask them on WhatsApp, and I will answer them as quickly as possible.
I have a question. Did you use the Flutter as your main development tool, or just for getting a prototypes for the clients?
I started with, so 6 years ago, I started with Java for Android. Back then, Flutter did not exist or was like really beginning, so to say. And then I switched to Flutter because, you know, if you are a solo developer, you would obviously not want to have two different code bases. So for the speed of development, I'm actually like using Flutter for my apps. I can show you if you want. So look, this is my Google Play developer account. All of those are in Flutter. For example, this one has around 25,000 users, and it has quite a high rating. So yeah, so everything is in Flutter here. They are also on the iOS App Store. So yeah, I'm using it in production, if you will, but you know, it's not. So to give you a bit of a side answer, companies are using React Native at the moment because they can reuse developers that already know JavaScript. That's the main selling point for them. But Flutter is okay. I mean, if it's a startup and they don't care about having developers, so or already developers that are using JavaScript in their company write that app, they will usually pick Flutter. But you know, that depends on many things.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Okay. So if there are no other questions, have a good day. I think there is another webinar later today about Unity, if I'm not mistaken. So if you are into that, you can go check it out. And yeah, good luck with the contest.